Hi everyone. So today I wanted to discuss about why it's so important to protect this cult. When you are in a cult mentality, you can give it whatever name you want, you know, the Latter-day Saints church, the Warren Jeff, cult, any cult. It is very, very important to protect that image and that whole religion or that whole idea because nobody else understands it. You understand it, and the few people around you understand it, and that little group of people really know the truth. Nobody else knows it, and we should keep that image very, very intact. So that's how Cult 101 is. Your leader is infallible, and you are here all pledging allegiance to this leader, and now you have to protect that image. So how does that play out in Islam? Like, when we were discussing, like for our community, like when we were, learning about our religion and as young, aspiring, ambitious people in Canada or whatever you were calling students, how did we see this? We saw this pretty clearly that topics were somehow always beyond our understanding. They always knew somehow better. We didn't know. And us questioning or us probing or reacting or in fact denouncing, when somebody did something wrong or was caught or whatever, done in illegal things, we were not supposed to all like denounce it. You were supposed to say, we don't know, there must be something better to it. There's like two sides to every story. They'll explain it away somehow, but of course that doesn't always work, and eventually you realize like that's just another tactic. Ultimately what you realize is the image of this cult, like this whole ideology is way too important than you and your well-being. If you suffer, that's okay, that's a small price to pay. If your kids are suffering, that's just a test from God. That's just another thing. Like it's always going to be explained away, but your actual safety, your truths, your heinous like acts should be covered for the greater good. This was a whole concept. Like things that are not explainable or like the people are sort of not really taking it in, we just push that aside and we just move on. It's called like selective amnesia. I feel like, there's so many, because there are a lot of topics like that in Islam. They're like, we don't know, we can't explain it, so we'll just like leave that because that's beyond understanding. One of them, obviously, when other people, like when the obvious arguments come up, they're like, no, these people are demonizers, they don't know what they're talking about, they just want to demonize us. But it just somehow is explained. We just don't know how to explain it, but it's somehow explained. Let's just leave it to the scholars with their verse translations. They'll figure it out. So that's how this incident, I think you could also say, came up, because like this guy has understood everything inside out, and when he was openly criticizing all these other practices, and of course like I never heard of this guy before in my life, but now you can see that how he was. That's a good example. You don't need other people to tell you from like hearsay. You have video evidence of how he used to talk and how he used to behave. Yeah, he was just like your usual self, criticizing everything that is kafirs, Western. I don't know who he, like all these weird, everything else was bad. Only he and his Islam was good. He's living here and everything, but only him and his Islam was so good, and nobody should talk about anything. And now that he's caught in this land, with their rules and laws, everyone's like, we don't know what to say. We're just gonna leave it alone. We're shocked, but we can't figure it out. We're just gonna just say like, we don't know why it happened. You know why it happened. You all know it happens. People come out and say it, they talk about it, you don't want to hear it, but it's a very good PR tactics, because This is part of cult mentality allegiance. You are not allowed to discuss. If you have kids who have suffered, you're maybe silently angry at home, but you continue doing the things you do, continue paying your money to this cult, continue like buying their product, and just, yeah, that's all you can do. So when somebody comes and tells you, like, why are you so invested? You just can't explain it. Like, that's how it is. And that's why it's so difficult for people to process. They're like, there are a lot of people who've gone through a lot of stuff, but they can't come out and say it because it's going to really, it's damning for the whole religion. It's putting down like these religious leaders. Like, what does it say about, I don't know, who cares? Nobody cares about what, like, they always think everyone's watching them. Actually, nobody cares. What are the other people finally going to say about Muslims? Like, really? So you're willing to sacrifice your peace, your safety, your rights just because you are so blindly following this cult? You're willing to put your kids at risk. You're willing for them to stay silent and this next generation to also continue. That's what you're willing to do for this cult. And I think that's a very good wake up call for a lot of people who are, blindly sitting and just watching from the side and be like, well, that's bad. That's bad. Because apparently, even if you got all the goodies like that you needed, like you have the masjid, you have this community, you have the nobody coming and saying, you have like this whole, you know, even then, somehow it didn't work. Somehow still you have all these issues. So another thing I wanted to also explore a little bit is how, because these things are not like exclusive to any one cult group. It happens anywhere. These specific principles like that you follow with a cult mentality, it usually gives you feeding ground to do all these acts like abuse, never questioning, never actually able to criticize, never holding accountable, because it really shakes up the whole your whole hierarchy, your whole belief system. It's really bringing down the morale. So there are tactics and there are ways of how you deal with these things in any in like in a group type of uh, yeah, like a religion, a cult, military style, whatever you want to call it. There's like a very big psychology behind how you are meant to hold them together. And in Cult 101, there's a list of things that are, you go down one by one, you'll see that they all have the same, like they're just it's like the same stencil. Things are varied, but just generally the same pattern of behaviors. Uh, some of the seeds of, I want to say this specifically, some of the seeds of misogyny that I see are sort of implanted, particularly in this religion, is how you have practices that you can't, because these practices are in place, they're just sort of like feeding ground for the rest of the people. The first one is, of course, having the opportunity to marry someone really young. Marry, and regardless, this man, whatever, they're allowed to go. 70-80-year-old man can go to a 9-year-old, and if they see her, they can go into that type of, it's a sanctioned relationship. Now it's obviously really crazy, and I mean, it was just not acceptable, but somehow they've made it sanctioned. They've sanctioned this. So this is like a feeding ground for a lot of issues. And people can't outright and say, they're like, well, now we have these new humanitarian rules that you can't have child marriages, but they're not really able to completely say it's wrong because it is infallible. Our infallible prophet did it, so they can't say no. You see, that's a problem right there. You can't say that was wrong. What they're trying to do is like change the story, like, no, she was 27. They weren't adults. But you can't simply say that he made a mistake, that was wrong, because then the whole deck of cards falls. Like, well, then what else is wrong? See, you start questioning everything else. The other idea that is very giving way to like sort of what you want to say misogynistic predatory thinking is this whole idea of how men are so this man, like, I mean, I feel bad because I have brothers, I have a husband, I have a son. I feel bad, like they demonize this whole gender. If you really think about it, like men are so this being so enticed that if they see a woman, they hear a woman, they'll just lose control. You know, they and then if you are indoctrinated with that idea, you're like, well, maybe that is how, that is how I guess men are, and it's like they should have known better. They shouldn't have come in front of us. They shouldn't have talked. So you see, it's putting the burden on the other. And but like, who gave you these crazy ideas? Who's suggesting all these stupid and crazy, ridiculous ideas that you're such a lame being that like even an animal can behave better because they still have like there's a courting and a female, like there's that. They're wildly, I mean, animals are naked, but human beings, they're like, no, if a male sees a hair of a woman, he'll just lose control. Like, you see how that's demonizing? You've put him below like dogs. So yeah, I think they do plant these seeds, and as compared to someone who's never been exposed to these ideas, they would just be like, wait a second, like, what are you trying to say? Is that what you think men are? Is that how you see this whole gender? They see a pubescent girl and they're just gonna not be able to, like, they don't know what to do. Really? Like, look at how this is painting this picture. And now you can change this narrative, like they're really trying to protect them. They're really trying to, no, you put these ideas that you are so bad, and God forbid, like, what you are gonna do. So because you have all these things in you, as compared to, like, there are, in this today's time and world, that is such a terrible excuse. You really do not need to do any of these things. You know what I mean? Like, if this was your need, you have actually ways to fulfill these needs now without any reason to do, like, just because you saw somebody walking across or you see a young girl. So this explanation falls flat. There's like deeper, uh, there's some other level of sickness going on that you can explain about, like, child level, but this is not it. So that's what I wanted to definitely point out. Like, there are seeds that are being planted in these cult mentality religions that people are like taking for granted, and they're like, well, that's how it is, I guess. You know, if you take if this is your whole way, this is your only way that you get like any information about your who you are, human being, psychology, like everything is only from this door. Of course, you're like limited to this cult mentality. You cannot have any other ideas. You cannot hold or examine any other ideas. This is the whole purpose of a cult, that you never ever think about anything else. You never have any other source of information. There's nobody else that knows anything, that has any truth. Only you have the source of truth. Only the spokesperson is the one telling you about all the truth and all the rules, making the decisions, this. So it's very important to keep this intact, because if anything says, wait a second, this something is wrong, this is here, the whole house of cards falls. And that's very important to think, because you owe it to yourself to have this, to open yourself up and to give yourself room to think, to have this idea of like, wait a second, let me hear all these other things. Maybe let's give them the benefit of doubt that maybe he was wrong. What if this was just a man saying things, and let's hear it from the other people. This man made some mistakes. Okay, he had some good ideas, but he made mistakes too. He wasn't the perfect person. He did like all these things, just like all the other people who have, like, work. I think you have some room to finally think and breathe. And maybe all these suffering and this, like all these scandals and everything, you know what, it'll be so much more relaxed and open, so much more relaxed and open, and be like, okay, yeah, this, I don't need this suffering, I don't need this, um, like this whole thing was supposed to make my life better, not me sacrificing my mental peace, my, like, my sukoon, my security, my sense of worth, my, give me trauma, give me all these ideas, and keep me, like, just put you in this box, like keep me in a box, while you, this cult mentality, keeps flourishing. We are all like gonna just say so. That's where it starts. I'm gonna end this video here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.